Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something today that I bet you think about a lot as a game master.
Let me guess.
Crafting those NPCs, those non-player characters that stick with your players, especially in D&D. Like how to make them unforgettable.
You got it. Always a hot topic. You're right. For game masters, especially in D&D, it's something we're always trying to refine and make better.
Right. And we've got some awesome sources to guide us. There's that pasted text we found. They lay out these 8 steps. Super practical.
Oh, yeah. 8 steps. That sounds like a good roadmap.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, we got to talk AI, ChatGPT, DALL-E 3, even the Gamemaster Platform. Everyone's buzzing about those.
Can't avoid them these days. They're everywhere.
So we're going to figure out how they can help us make some seriously epic NPCs. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I think any game master will agree. A truly memorable NPC, they can have an impact that goes way beyond just a single encounter.
Oh, for sure. You're talking about those characters that players still talk about like years later.
Years later, exactly. They become part of the game's legend, the story people tell.
I love that, part of the legend. It's not just about those quest givers who vanish after you get what you need, right?
No, these are the NPCs that players, they might name their characters after these NPCs or draw fan art. They become iconic.
That's the dream. So how do we get there? I mean, we mentioned those AI tools, ChatGPT, DALL-E 3, the Gamemaster Platform.
Powerful tools. It can be a bit overwhelming, though.
Totally. But before we get all techie, I'm curious, from your perspective, what makes an NPC truly unforgettable? Like, what's that secret sauce?
Motivation, without a doubt. It's all about motivation.
Yeah.
Like, why is this NPC even in the world? What do they want? What are they scared of?
Makes sense. It's like giving them a soul almost, right?
Exactly. You give them those motivations, and suddenly they become believable. Players start to care what happens to them.
It's so true. It's like in a movie, the characters you really connect with, you get their motivations, even if you don't agree with them.
Right. Their actions make sense. They're not just random. They're driven by something real.
Now, that pasted text we have, it lists 8 steps for building these awesome NPCs. And guess what? Motivation, that's step 5.
So it's important, but not the very first thing.
Right. We got to lay some groundwork first. So what about those initial steps? What are the building blocks we need to think about?
Well, step 1, it's all about purpose.
Oh.
Figure out their role in your world. How are they going to interact with those players?
Okay, so are they a helpful friend? A tricky villain? Someone who knows a ton of secrets?
Yeah, exactly. Are they a wise mentor, a mischievous trickster, a source of rumors?
Ooh, I like that, source of rumors.
Got to have those. You nail down their purpose, and it sets the stage for everything else.
Right, like their job in the story. And I see our pasted text. It gives a whole bunch of examples for purpose.
Oh, yeah. It's a good list to get those creative gears turning.
Like we got the classic quest giver, but then there's rumor monger, even, oh, this is fun, beast tamer.
Beast tamer. Oh, the possibilities.
I know. So say we're going with beast tamer. What's next? How do we make them more than just a title?
That's where archetypes come in, step 2. It's about adding some depth, giving them some personality.
So we're not just saying beast tamer, we're saying maybe they fit the innocent archetype?
Innocent, I like that. Someone who sees the good in every creature, maybe a bit naive, but kind-hearted.
Yeah, or we could go the opposite direction, make them an outlaw type, breaking all the rules.
Ooh, using those beasts for their own gain, maybe a bit rougher on the edges.
2 simple choices, but already totally different characters, right?
Exactly. And those different personalities, well, they're going to determine how they interact with your players.
Oh, totally. So picture this. Your players meet both of these beast tamers. The innocent one, they'd probably be super helpful.
Offering their beast to help the players, maybe giving them advice, trusting them easily.
But the outlaw, they'd be suspicious, maybe even try to trick the players, right?
Exactly. They might challenge the players, maybe even try to use them for their own ends.
This is getting good. I'm seeing how these first 2 steps, the purpose and the archetype, they're like setting the foundation.
The foundation for everything else.
Yeah, for their motivation and how they act in the story. Okay, but we can't forget step 3. This is the fun part, the memorable traits.
Got to make them stand out, right? Give the players something to remember.
In this list, it's gold. Okay, I am loving singed eyebrows. I mean, come on, perfect for someone who messes with magic.
A little accident prone, maybe. Or maybe they're just really intense when they cast spells.
Or how about nervous whistler? Someone always on edge.
Always looking over their shoulder. Maybe they've got something to hide.
But how do these little things make an NPC so memorable?
Well, it's those specific details that players latch onto. It's not just the grand backstory or their role in the world. It's those little
Boy,
quirks.
it makes them feel real, like a real person. It's not just a warrior, it's the warrior with the nervous whistle.
Exactly. And suddenly you've got a visual, you know, and it can lead to some fun role playing too.
Oh, totally. Like, the players might try to figure out why they're so nervous or use it against them.
Maybe offer them some calming tea or try to startle them. It opens up all sorts of possibilities.
I'm seeing how these little details can really add some layers, Make them feel more real and give the players something to remember.
Exactly. And it could even spark entire plot lines that you hadn't even planned for.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's move on to step 4. Backstory.
Ah, yes. Every character has a past.
Our source has some really cool examples. Okay, this one jumps out at me. Disgraced scholar.
Ooh, disgraced scholar. There's a story there.
Right. So help me understand this. How does a backstory like that actually affect how an NPC interacts with the players?
It's all about the questions it raises. Why were they disgraced? What knowledge did they have that got them into trouble?
Ooh, forbidden knowledge. That's always good.
Right. And are they bitter about it? Or have they found some new purpose in life?
So many possibilities.
Now imagine this disgraced scholar meets your players. They might not trust authority anymore.
They could be hesitant to share what they know.
Or maybe they're desperate to prove they're still smart, still valuable.
Oh, I love that. You could even have them be tricked by someone because of their past,
Exploited because of their past mistakes. Maybe someone uses their knowledge for evil.
It's like their backstory becomes this hidden wound.
A vulnerability, yeah. And it influences how they act, how they treat others.
And that's what makes it so interesting for players, right? They sense there's more to this character than meets the eye.
Absolutely. There's a mystery there, something to uncover.
This reminds me of what you said about motivations being so important. It's like the backstory feeds directly into those motivations.
You're exactly right. It's all connected. The backstory gives context to those motivations.
And those motivations drive how the NPC acts and ultimately how they treat the players.
It's a chain reaction. It all starts with that backstory.
Okay, I'm getting the big picture now. We go from purpose and archetype to those memorable traits, the backstory.
And it all builds toward those motivations that make them tick.
Like building a house layer by layer.
Love that analogy. And just like a house, you need a solid foundation before you start decorating.
But speaking of adding those finishing touches, let's talk about something that can really bring an NPC to life. Their voice.
Ah, yes. The way they speak can make all the difference.
You're talking about step 6, right? Signature phrases and dialogue style.
Oh, gotta give them a voice players can hear.
Our source has this great example, Garen Stonebrew. He's a dwarf, and he says things like, I, and tougher times in the mines.
Classic dwarf talk. I love it.
Let's play with this. So a player walks up to Garen, asks for directions. How would he respond? Give me your best Garen.
Let's see. Aye, looking for the old dwarfen ruins. Head north past Widow Melkin's farm, then east of the bend in the river.
Perfect. I can hear him already.
Used to be a mine there, back in tougher times.
Just a few phrases, and suddenly he's alive, even in a short conversation.
It's the magic of dialogue.
But it's not just the words, right? It's the whole style, how they talk.
You got it.
Yeah.
Do they use big words or slang? Do they ramble on or get straight to the point?
Do they speak in riddles?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All those choices add to their personality.
It's all clicking now. We've got their purpose, their archetype, those memorable traits, a backstory, motivations.
And now a voice.
Feels like we've built a pretty solid character here. So what's next?
Well, we've laid the groundwork using good old storytelling. But now, let's see how we can use some of that AI magic to take things to the next level.
Okay, I'm intrigued. This is where ChatGPT and those other tools come in, right?
Exactly. Steps 7 and 8 are all about using AI to enhance our creations.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I'm curious about your take on using AI for this. Is it about letting the AI do all the work, or is it more like a partnership?
It's definitely a partnership. AI can be amazing for brainstorming ideas, refining things, even making visuals.
So it's not about replacing our creativity.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's like having a creative partner, someone to bounce ideas off of.
That's a relief. I was worried AI would take over the whole process. But it sounds like it's more about using these tools to boost our own imagination, our storytelling.
Precisely. It's about finding that balance, between human creativity and AI assistance. And speaking of AI assistance, let's jump into step 7, NPC profile, prompting with ChatGPT.
Okay, so this is where we take everything we've come up with, all that info, and feed it to ChatGPT.
Exactly. We create a detailed prompt for ChatGPT, telling it about our NPC.
So like their purpose, archetype, those memorable traits, the backstory, motivations, even how they talk.
All of it. And ChatGPT can analyze all that and then give us suggestions, maybe some more traits, motivations, relationships, even specific dialogue lines.
Wow. It's like having a brainstorming partner who's read every fantasy book ever written.
Exactly. It can give us insights we might never have thought of on our own.
But what if we don't like what ChatGPT comes up with? Can we change it? Make it our own?
Absolutely. It's a collaboration, remember. We can refine what it gives us, add our own personal touches, make sure the final result is really our vision.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better. I didn't want to lose control of the creative process, so ChatGPT is more like a starting point, a way to get the ball rolling.
Exactly. Like a co-writer helping us get past writer's block and come up with fresh ideas.
I love that.
Huh.
Okay, so now I'm really curious about DALL-E 3. How does that work for making NPCs? Do you have to be like a digital art pro to use it?
Not at all. DALL-E 3 is super user-friendly. You don't need any art skills. It's all about giving it clear descriptions of your character.
So let's go back to that disgraced scholar we were talking about. How would you use DALL-E 3 to bring them to life visually?
Well, think about what they look like. What are they wearing? What kind of expression do they have?
Okay, I'm picturing them in these worn-out robes. Their hair's a mess, and they have this look in their eyes like they've seen some rough stuff.
Perfect. Those are great details to give DALL-E 3. You could say something like, generate an image of a disgraced scholar in worn robes, unkempt hair, and a world-weary expression.
Wow, so it's that simple.
Pretty much. You can even tell what art style you want, the lighting, all sorts of stuff.
This is blowing my mind. I can already imagine all the awesome NPCs I could create with these tools. It's like a whole new world of possibilities.
It really is. And the best part is, these tools are always getting better, more powerful, easier to use.
So exciting. So thinking about all the incredible NPCs out there in games, books, movies, what are some traits, some quirks that you found to be really memorable?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are so many great examples.
I know, right? But what really sticks with you?
You know, one thing that always gets me is when an NPC has a unique way of speaking.
Like an accent.
Yeah.
Or a catchphrase they always use.
Exactly. Or maybe even a speech impediment. It's those little things that make them feel so real.
Oh, absolutely. I remember this one campaign I played in, there was an NPC who would click their teeth together whenever they got nervous.
Oh, I can picture that.
It was such a small thing, but it made them so memorable and kind of endearing, too.
Totally. And it probably led to some fun moments in the game. Did your players try to figure out what made them so nervous?
All the time. It's those little unexpected things that can really elevate a character.
It's like adding a dash of spice to a dish. Takes something ordinary and makes it special.
Love that analogy. And it brings us back to the importance of details, right?
Details are everything. Whether it's a physical quirk, the way they talk, a specific part of their backstory, those little things make all the difference.
Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
Well, above all, remember this. To create NPCs that people won't forget, you gotta make them feel real. Give them clear motivations, a backstory that matters, and those little quirks that make them unique.
And don't be afraid to play around with those AI tools. ChatGPT and DALL-E 3, they can be a huge help.
For sure. But always remember, they're just tools. Your own creativity, your imagination, that's the real magic.
Well said. I'm feeling so inspired now. I'm ready to go create some epic NPCs.
Me too.
But before we go, I gotta ask our listeners a question. Think about this. If you could make an NPC using these AI tools, what's the one unique trait that would instantly grab your player's attention?
Ooh, that's a great question to ponder. I'm really curious to hear what our listeners come up with.
I know, it really gets those creative gears turning. And you know what? I have a feeling that a lot of our own NPCs might get a little makeover after this deep dive.
I have a feeling you're right about that.
So much to think about, so many possibilities. But hey, that's what we love about this, right?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of tabletop role-playing. It's all about imagination and collaboration. And now, with these new AI tools, the potential is limitless.
I couldn't agree more. I think it would be great to get your advice for those who are, just starting out with all of this.
Oh, yeah. Where to begin?
It can be a little overwhelming, right? All these steps, all these tools.
It could be a lot to take in, that's for sure. My advice would be start simple.
Okay, I like that. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Focus on those core things we talked about. Purpose, archetype, and maybe just one one strong, memorable trait.
Don't try to do too much at once, right?
Exactly. You can always add more later, build on that foundation.
So it's kind of like cooking, right?
Oh, I like that analogy.
You pick your main ingredients first, then you can get fancy with the spices later.
Exactly. Master those basics, and then you can experiment as you go. And remember, those AI tools, they're there to help you every step of the way.
That's reassuring. Makes it less intimidating. So, thinking about that disgraced scholar example, how would you actually start building that character in ChatGPT? What kind of prompt would you use?
Ah, that's the key. A good prompt can make all the difference. So with the scholar, let's think. Their purpose is probably going to be about knowledge information. Right?
Yeah, they were a scholar after all.
Right. Maybe they're a reluctant mentor, or they're trying to redeem themselves by sharing what they know.
And their backstory, being disgraced, that suggests a fall from grace, maybe a loss of status or reputation.
Exactly. And that can tie into their motivations. Are they bitter, seeking revenge?
Or maybe they just want to prove their worth again.
Exactly. So a good starting prompt for ChatGPT could be something like, create an NPC profile for a disgraced scholar who possesses forbidden knowledge and seeks redemption by using their expertise to help others.
Okay, so we're giving ChatGPT a direction, some key elements, but we're leaving room for it to be creative.
Exactly. It's a collaboration, remember. We're guiding it, but we also want to see what it comes up with.
I'm already seeing how this could be a game changer. You know, it's like having a brainstorming partner who's instantly got access to, like, this infinite library of ideas.
It can really speed things up.
And help us break through those creative blocks, those times when you're just stuck.
Absolutely. But remember, we always review, tweak, add our own personal touches. We make sure it's really our character.
Makes sense. So we've talked ChatGPT. What about DALL-E 3? How can we make sure that the visual we get actually matches what we have in mind for our NPC?
It's all about giving DALL-E 3 clear, descriptive prompts. You don't need to be a digital art expert or anything. Just describe what you see in your head.
Okay, so sticking with the disgraced scholar, how would you describe them to DALL-E 3?
Well, what are they wearing? What's their overall look, their demeanor?
I'm thinking worn robes, probably a little tattered, hair's a bit of a mess, and in their eyes you can see they've seen some tough times.
Perfect. You're painting a picture with words.
So I tell DALL-E 3 all that.
Exactly. You can say something like, generate an image of a disgraced scholar with worn robes, unkempt hair, and a world-weary expression. And you can even get specific, like make the robes dark blue or give them a scar over their right eye.
Oh, so cool. It's like bringing those characters to life right in front of you.
It's amazing what these tools can do. And remember, you can always experiment with different prompts, see what DALL-E 3 comes up with. You might be surprised.
This has been an incredible journey, We've gone from the basics, like purpose and archetype, to those really subtle details like backstory, motivations, and now even visuals.
And we've seen how AI can be a powerful tool to help us along the way.
It feels like a whole new era for NPC creation.
It really is.
But as amazing as all this tech is, sometimes I find myself going back to those classic NPCs, the ones from the old modules, the ones who inspired us in the first place. What about you? Any favorites that come to mind?
Oh, definitely. I think back to some of the iconic NPCs from the early days of D&D, the ones who felt so real, so well developed, even without all the fancy AI tools we have today.
They had something special, didn't they?
They did. It wasn't just about their stats or their role in the story. It was about their personality, their quirks, their flaws.
Like they felt like real people, You could imagine having a beer with them at the tavern.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all strive for as we create our own NPCs, whether we're using AI or good old-fashioned pen and paper.
So what is it about those classic NPCs that made them so compelling? What can we learn from them?
I think it's about focusing on the human element, even if they're not human, giving them relatable motivations, desires, fears, making them feel like they have a life outside of their interactions with the players.
It's like they have a past, a present, and a future, even if we only see a glimpse of it.
Exactly. And those glimpses, those little hints, those are what make players want to learn more.
It's like the iceberg analogy, right? We only see the tip, but we know there's so much more beneath the surface.
Exactly. And it's up to us as game masters to create those hidden depths, to give our NPCs that sense of mystery and intrigue. And I think those AI tools we've been talking about, they can actually help us do that. if we use them wisely.
I'm with you. I'm seeing those AI tools in a whole new light now, not just as ways to generate ideas, but as ways to enhance the humanity of our NPCs.
Precisely. It's about finding that balance, between the technical and the creative. The AI can handle the heavy lifting, but it's up to us to breathe life into those characters, to give them a soul, and that's where the real magic happens.
I love that. It's like we're taking the best of both worlds, the power of technology and the magic of human imagination, and combining them to create something truly special.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this such an exciting time to be a game master. We have all these amazing tools at our disposal, but ultimately, it's still about the stories we tell, the characters we create, and the connections we forge with our players.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to create these amazing NPCs using both traditional methods and these new AI tools.
It's been a great discussion.
It really has. But I think it's time to flip the script a little bit.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Instead of focusing on what we, as game masters, can do, let's talk about the player's perspective. What makes an NPC truly unforgettable from their point of view?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah,
Because in the end, it's the players who bring those NPCs to life at the table.
right. We can create the most elaborate backstories, the most detailed descriptions, but it's the players who interact with those characters, who form those bonds, who make those memories.
And that's something we shouldn't forget.
So thinking about your own experiences as a player,
Mm.
what are some of the NPCs that have really stuck with you over the years? The ones you still talk about?
There are so many. But one that comes to mind is from a campaign I played years ago. He was this grizzled old warrior, retired from adventuring, and running a small tavern in a remote village.
Sounds like a classic.
He was. But what made him so memorable wasn't his fighting prowess or his tales of past glories. It was his kindness, his generosity, his willingness to help anyone in need, even though he had nothing left to prove.
So it was his heart that made him unforgettable.
Exactly. And that's something I think we often overlook when we're building NPCs. We get caught up in the stats, the skills, the plot hooks. But sometimes the most powerful element is simply compassion.
It's those moments of genuine connection, of human kindness that really resonate with players.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be anything grand or heroic. It could be a simple act of kindness, a word of encouragement, a moment of shared laughter.
It's those little things that make the world feel real and the characters feel like people we care about.
Exactly. And that's what makes those NPCs so unforgettable.
Yeah.
Because they remind us that even in a world of dragons and dungeons, it's the human connections that matter most.
I love that it's those human connections, even in a fantasy world. As we've been talking, I've been thinking about my own campaigns. And one thing that always seems to work, giving NPCs a secret.
A secret. Interesting. What do you mean?
Like, it doesn't have to be huge, world-shattering stuff. Could be something small, like a hidden talent or a past regret.
I see. Adds a bit of mystery.
Yeah. Or even like a secret crush, something like that. It just adds this layer of depth that players, they can't help but dig into.
I like that. It's like you're giving them a puzzle to solve, but it's about the character.
Exactly. And it ties back to those motivations, the backstory. That secret might be why they do certain things.
Makes them more believable, more complex.
Right. It's those layers, like we keep saying. The more layers an NPC has, the more they stick with you.
For sure. It's what makes them feel real.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, what are some of the big takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
Well, first and foremost, to make those NPCs truly unforgettable, make them feel real, give them motivations that make sense, a backstory that matters, and sprinkle in those quirks that make them unique.
And don't be afraid to play around with those AI tools. ChatGPT, DALL-E 3, they can be super helpful for brainstorming and bringing those characters to life.
Absolutely. But remember, they're just tools. Your creativity, that's the key ingredient.
Well said. I'm feeling super inspired, ready to make some amazing NPCs.
You do.
But before we go, one last question for our listeners out there. If you could create an NPC using these AI tools, what's the one unique trait that would immediately hook your players? What would make them go, whoa, who is this character?
That's a fantastic question to leave them with. I'm excited to see what they come up with. So much potential out there, so many stories waiting to be told.